Understand why we use different names for properties and getters or setters. When using getters and setters, we often store the real value in a different property, usually starting with an underscore. This helps prevent naming conflict and keep our code clean and predictable. In this very example, we want to look at the difference of how you can name property and things like getters or setters in your JavaScript classes. So we are going to be looking at an example that demonstrates this naming convention in this lesson. So inside my script section, I have added some comments in order to show steps that we need to follow to be able to create this example that is needed to show the difference between this. And you will see how we are going to be using different name to represent property and to represent either getter or setter in our code. So this example is actually going to show us the difference between actual property and getter or setter. So let's start. Now, I have about 5 steps that we need to follow in order to make this example. The first one says create class and property. Step 2 says create getter. Step 3, create setter. Step 4, create object. And then finally, the 5th step, which is the last step, says access the value and then display it. So let's go ahead. I'll start with the first step that says create class and property. So I will go ahead now and make a class and a property. So how do you make a class? We call the class keyword. So let me call the class name car. And now inside it, I can make a property with the constructor. So I want this car to have just one property, brand. And I can then set this dot underscore car name equals to brand. Now take note that I could have done something like this dot car name equals to brand. It will still work, but I'm adding underscore. And this is the main lesson that we want to learn from this example, especially how naming conventions can be done when working with the properties and things like getters or setter in a JavaScript class. So that is the purpose of this lesson. So take note of how we are using underscore before the name that is being put inside the property inside this class here. So the real data that we have here is what is stored inside this underscore kernel. Now the next step, which is the second step, is create getter. So I can go ahead now and create a getter, get kernel. So I want it to return this dot underscore kernel as well. And then step 3 says create setter. So I'll go ahead and create a setter, kernel this dot underscore kernel equals to X. Now step 4 says create object. So now I can come outside of this and create an object. Let me call it my car equals to new car full. Then I can get this out on the screen. Document get element by ID dot inner HTML in order to update it and say my car dot kernel. Now this should give us a full as the output. Now what you have just done here is this: we create a class and a property, and then we create a getter. Then this getter's purpose is to read value from our the real car name that is storing the data, and then we create a setter in order to update the value of whatever that is being passed in. Then we created an object, which is what we have here from the class, which happens to be the blueprint. And here, my car name dot car name is what we are using to access the value. So what we've basically done here is that value is stored in this underscore car name, and then the getter method accesses the underscore car name. This part updates it, and then here, by creating the object as a user, you are able to interact with the car name and then use that to return a value. So the actual property is being stored inside this underscore car name, as you can see, and this car name and car name, which belongs to getter and setter, are just normal, what should I call it? So they are just normal name assigned to them. They are not the actual properties that stores the value. The actual property that stores the value is the one with this underscore kernel that you can see here. And when you are giving names, or when you are giving convention to how you name your property in classes, you need to be careful in order to avoid conflicts that can lead to infinite loop or unexpected behavior. So the thing about this example is that the getter or setter name, which is what we have here and here, they must not be the same as the actual store property. So which means these two, they must not be like this. That's the purpose. Of course, if we leave it like this, it will still work, as you can see. But sometimes using this convention can help us to differentiate between the actual property and things like getters or setters method that are different from the actual property that you can see in our example. The getter and the setter are function under hood, as you can see. So you can see what they are doing. They are basically return stuffs from the original property that we have in the class. So we store the real value in underscore car name, but we access it using car name. So we are not accessing it this way. We are not doing something like this when we want to access. Of course, if we do it like this, it will still work if you take note, but then we are accessing it this way, which because that is to tell us that it is not mandatory to use that underscore. So we may not use the underscore, and this will still give us what we want as the expected result. Now, why do we now use underscore car name instead of normal car name just like this? It is because we want to avoid conflict with the getter and setter methods that we have here. So that is the reason why we are using that underscore, for showing the actual property that contains or holds the data, and also to prevent conflict and error. And because this is also a common convention in JavaScript, although it is not mandatory, it is optional. So when using getters and setters, we often see the real value in a different property like this using underscore. This prevents naming conflict and keep our code clean and predictable. That is just the basic usefulness of this naming convention. If I remove the underscore, that does not mean the code will not work. It will still work, but as it is now, you can easily differentiate that this car name is different from the one that the getter and the setters are using in this example.